Welcome back, everybody, to the Deep Dive Safety and Risk Management Pros.
Yes, welcome back.
Today, we're tackling a topic that honestly causes a lot of confusion out there.
Yeah.
And we hear about it all the time from you guys in the field, and that is OSHA's role in ag and maritime.
Yeah, it can get complicated.
It was presented by Safety One Source.
Absolutely.
And they're the ones who, realize that you guys in these industries, you face really unique challenges.
Yeah.
So this deep dive is all about making sure you have the knowledge you need to handle them.
Yeah, we want to make sure you guys feel confident out there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we've got research articles. We even got some real-world case studies that you guys sent in.
That's right. Pulled out some of the good ones.
So we're really excited to dive into this stuff. But, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Because, everybody thinks they know OSHA, right? It's like the big name in workplace safety, but
yeah, everybody's heard of OSHA, but not everybody understands it.
Not that simple.
That's right.
Especially in these sectors.
Yeah, you think you know it until you really get into some of these specific examples, and it can get kind of hairy.
Yeah, so today we're going beyond those, OSHA 101 basics.
Yeah.
We're going deep.
Deep dive.
Into how OSHA actually reaches into agricultural work and maritime operations.
Yeah.
But we also want to talk about those, gray areas.
Blurry lines.
Where it doesn't apply, right?
That's right.
We'll break down, which activities fall into their jurisdiction, which regulations apply.
Yep.
What it all means for you guys when you're actually out there, boots on the ground.
This is about giving you those aha moments where you suddenly understand OSHA not as just this big rule book,
right,
but like a framework for thinking about risk.
Okay, so let's start with agriculture.
All right.
Seems simple enough, right? You got your crops, your animals, wide open fields.
Right.
But when you bring OSHA into it,
yeah,
it's not so simple.
It gets a little more complicated there.
Yeah.
One of the big misconceptions is that anything that happens on a farm is automatically OSHA.
Yeah.
But it's not that straightforward.
Okay.
Location matters a lot.
Okay.
Let's say you're delivering feed to a chicken farm.
Okay.
That's probably going to be considered an agricultural operation by OSHA.
Okay.
But if you're packing those onions off-site
right
after they've been harvested, OSHA might not see that the same way.
So the line isn't always so clear?
No, not at all.
What about those small family farms?
Yeah.
Are they under OSHA's microscope?
This is where it gets interesting.
Okay.
If you've got a small farm, 10 or fewer employees.
Okay.
And you haven't had any temporary labor camp activity in the past year, generally exempt.
Okay.
But the moment you bring in temporary workers and you have to house them, even for a short period, that exemption is gone.
Poof.
Poof.
So even on a small scale,
yeah,
having those workers on site and having to house them, that brings in a whole other level of OSHA.
That's right.
Scrutiny.
Scrutiny, exactly.
So let's talk about scrutiny for a minute. What specific OSHA rules actually do apply to farms no matter the size?
There are a few big ones, and they make a lot of sense when you think about the work that's happening.
Okay.
So you've got things like tractor rollover, protective structures, ROPS, guarding of farm equipment, things that you would expect given all the machinery involved.
All right.
But the problem is there's a limited number of agriculture-specific standards.
Cool.
And that's where things get a little tricky.
So what happens when there's a hazard?
Yeah.
But there's no specific OSHA rule that covers it?
Yeah.
So let's say someone's working in a grain bin.
Okay, good example.
Tons of potential danger there.
Absolutely.
But maybe not a clear-cut regulation.
Right, so that's where the general duty clause comes into play.
Okay.
And this one is huge for agriculture.
Okay.
It basically says that employers always have a responsibility to provide a safe workplace, even if there's no specific rule for a certain hazard.
Yeah.
So this is really important in ag, where you've got all kinds of risks that aren't always written out in the OSHA standards.
So you're saying that our safety and risk management folks listening, they need to be thinking proactively.
Proactive, exactly.
Just because OSHA doesn't have a specific line item for that hazard on a farm, it doesn't mean that you're off the hook.
No, you're not off the hook. The general duty clause is a big one.
General duty clause.
Got to keep that one in mind.
All right, so let's talk about pesticides. Seems like OSHA would be all over that, right?
Seems like it.
But
here's another turf ball.
Okay.
OSHA actually has no jurisdiction when it comes to pesticides.
Wow.
I know it's surprising.
That is very surprising. I bet a lot of people don't realize that.
A lot of people don't. It's a common misconception.
So pesticides seem like such a clear workplace safety issue.
Yeah.
Why is it the EPA and not OSHA?
It really gets to the heart of how different agencies approach risk.
Okay.
OSHA is really focused on preventing injuries. False machinery accidents, that sort of thing.
Yeah, the immediate stuff.
Exactly.
Okay.
EPA, with the worker protection standard, they're taking a much broader approach.
Okay.
They're looking at the long-term health effects of pesticide exposure.
So it's not just about whether somebody gets hurt.
Yeah.
It's about how they might get hurt and over what time frame.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so that nuance probably really impacts how, somebody in a safety role would approach a risk assessment.
Big time.
On a farm.
Absolutely. It changes the whole game.
And we've got one more of these shared authority situations for you.
Okay.
This time it's between OSHA and the Wage and Hour Division.
All right.
They both have a stake in the field sanitation and temporary labor camp standards.
Right. So you've got two different agencies, potentially two different interpretations.
That sounds like a compliance headache.
It can be.
Waiting to happen.
It definitely adds another layer of complexity.
Okay.
You guys out there, safety and risk management pros, you've got to be extra diligent.
Okay.
You need to know which agency is calling the shots on each standard and how their approaches might differ.
So wrapping up this agriculture section, it's clear that one size fits all does not apply.
Absolutely not.
To OSHA.
No way.
You've got these exemptions, the limited standards, shared authority.
Yeah.
It's a lot to keep straight.
So the key takeaway here is that you've got to go deeper than those general OSHA posters on the wall.
Right.
Understand the nuances of agriculture, know which agencies are involved, and most importantly, think critically about those hazards that might not have a specific rule attached to them.
Great advice.
That's right.
Now let's shift gears and try to navigate the equally complex world of OSHA and maritime operations.
All right, let's do it.
So I'm thinking ships, port shipyards.
All of that.
And a whole lot of potential for things to go wrong.
Oh, yeah. You're not wrong about that. Maritime is a world unto itself.
Okay.
It's got its own unique hazards.
Okay.
And you guessed it.
I'm ready.
Unique ways that OSHA comes into play.
Oh, boy.
This is where it gets really interesting.
All right. I'm excited.
I'm excited, too.
Okay. So we've established that maritime is anything but straightforward.
Yeah.
When it comes to OSHA. So where do we even begin to unpack all of this?
That's the question, isn't it?
It is.
Well, I think the best place to start is with the biggest player alongside OSHA.
Okay.
And that's the U.S. Coast Guard.
Right, because it's not just OSHA calling the shots here.
No, it's not.
So how do their jurisdictions overlap?
Well, think about it this way. OSHA focuses on the worker.
Okay.
No matter what the vessel is.
Got it.
The Coast Guard is primarily concerned with the vessel itself.
Oh.
Seaworthiness and safety for those on board.
So you could have a situation where OSHA is concerned with, a worker's exposure to hazardous chemicals during repairs.
Yep.
While the Coast Guard is, making sure that the ship's fire suppression system is up to code.
Exactly. They're coming at it from two different angles.
Got it.
And this back and forth, it gets even more complicated.
Okay.
When you look at specific sectors.
Okay.
Let's start with shipyard employment.
All right.
OSHA actually has authority over shipyard employers.
How's that?
For work done on vessels.
Okay.
Even Coast Guard inspected vessels.
Okay.
But,
yeah,
there's always a... but
of course.
That authority only applies if the work is being done by shipyard employees, not by the vessel's crew.
Got it.
So if I'm a shipyard worker going on board to do some welding,
okay,
OSHA is watching out for me.
Got it.
But if I'm part of the ship's crew, doing routine maintenance, Coast Guard's jurisdiction.
So same job, different vessel, but completely different oversight.
Exactly.
It sounds like keeping track of all this could be a full-time job.
It's a lot to juggle, that's for sure.
It is.
And then you add uninspected vessels into the mix. Things like smaller boats and barges.
Okay.
OSHA has full authority on those.
Really?
No matter who's doing the work.
So uninspected vessel equals broader OSHA reach.
You got it.
All right. Well, what about work on U.S. Navy vessels?
Oh, yeah.
That seems like a whole other
ball game.
Of complexity.
Exactly.
So how does that work?
So for Navy vessels, OSHA has authority over shipyard work.
Okay.
Done by contractors.
Okay, so those civilian workers coming in to do repairs.
Yeah, upgrades, all that.
OSHA sets the safety standards for them.
That's right. However.
Here's the big however.
Always a however.
Yeah, I knew it was coming.
OSHA has no authority over uniformed military personnel.
So same job, different vessel, but completely different oversight.
It depends who's holding the wrench.
Oh, man. I know, right?
And don't forget the wild card.
Oh, yeah. We can't forget about that.
State plans.
Yeah, state plan.
How do they fit into this maritime puzzle?
Okay, so for private sector maritime work,
state plans generally have authority on the land.
Okay.
But when you step onto navigable waters, federal OSHA takes over.
So a shipyard worker in, California could be covered by Cal OSHA while they're on the dock.
Uh-huh.
But once they step onto a barge, it's federal OSHA territory.
Exactly. Jurisdiction can change in an instant.
It really is like this complex puzzle.
It is.
That you've got to figure out which pieces go where.
And the pieces are always moving.
Oh, boy.
So you've got to know where you're operating.
Okay.
What type of vessel you're dealing with.
Okay.
And who ultimately has jurisdiction over worker safety.
So much to keep track of.
That's why we're here.
It is.
To help you guys make sense of it all.
Okay, so we've talked about shipyard employment. But maritime is so much more than just shipyards.
Oh, yeah. So much more.
So what about all those other activities?
Yeah.
Like commercial diving, fishing, towing.
All important, all covered by OSHA in some way.
Okay, so OSHA has a role there too.
Absolutely.
How does that work?
Well, OSHA's reach extends to those areas.
Okay.
But the regulations and how they're applied can be really different.
Okay.
Commercial diving, for example, that's a high-risk activity.
Yeah,
so it's got its own set of standards. You're talking pre-dive planning equipment requirements, emergency procedures, even decompression schedules to prevent the bends.
Decompression schedules?
Yeah.
That's not something you hear about in a typical office.
No, not at all.
So it really highlights how specialized some of these maritime safety concerns are.
Yeah. And here's where those jurisdictional overlaps can get really tricky again.
Okay.
Let's say that commercial diving is happening as part of shipyard employment.
Okay.
Like, if they're doing repairs on a vessel's hull, then all those shipyard-specific regulations we talked about earlier,
they apply.
Eyes kick in, too.
So you could have, like, multiple layers of OSHA regs.
Absolutely.
Depending on the situation.
It's all about connecting the dots.
Okay, well, commercial fishing, that's going to be a whole other...
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Can of worms.
It is.
So how does OSHA handle that?
So with commercial fishing, there's not one set of dedicated regulations.
Okay.
Instead, OSHA uses a mix of their general industry standards from 29 CFR Part 1910, and then the maritime-specific regs that we've already talked about.
So it's like this maritime safety puzzle.
Yeah, it's a puzzle for sure.
You've got to find the right pieces and fit them together based on the situation.
That's the name of the game.
What about other areas like marine construction?
Yeah, so things like building those offshore wind farms or bridges over water.
Okay.
Same idea.
Okay.
Figure out which OSHA standards apply.
Got it.
Based on the activity and the type of vessel involved.
So we've covered a lot here.
A lot.
Overlapping jurisdictions, state plans, specialized regulations.
Don't forget the general duty clause.
The general duty clause, right?
Always lurking in the background. Any advice for our safety and risk management pros out there on how to navigate this?
Yeah, because it's a lot.
It is.
To keep straight.
First and foremost, don't be afraid to ask for help.
Okay.
OSHA has a ton of resources online.
Okay.
Those maritime-specific tool bag and tool shed directives we mentioned earlier, those are gold mines of information.
Okay.
And your local OSHA office, they're there to help.
Okay, so it's not about trying to be an expert on everything.
No.
It's knowing where to go to find the right information.
Exactly. Find the experts.
Good point.
And beyond the regulations, good safety practices, those are universal.
Right.
Strong safety culture, hazard identification and control, worker involvement.
So while navigating those regs is important, it's not the only piece of the puzzle.
No.
You got to create a safety-conscious environment.
Yeah, right.
And that takes effort from everybody.
And that brings us to another interesting aspect of maritime safety, security procedures.
Okay, so now we're going beyond just workplace hazards in the world of national security.
They're going deeper.
Okay, so what do safety and risk management pros need to know?
One of the big things is the Transportation Worker Identification Credential Program.
The TWIC.
TWIC, that's right.
What's that all about?
It's basically a special ID card for maritime workers.
Okay.
Designed to keep facilities and vessels secure.
Makes sense.
And these cards, they're pretty high-tech.
Oh.
They use biometric data like fingerprints to verify the worker's identity.
So it's all about preventing unauthorized access.
Exactly.
And protecting against potential threats.
Now, here's something you might not know. OSHA compliance officers CSHOs. They don't actually need a separate TWIC card to do their inspections.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right. They've already got their official OSHA credentials and their government ID.
So they're good to go.
They're good to go. But if there are any issues, they should contact the local Coast Guard.
Good to know. So what other security-related things should those CSHOs be aware of when they're working at U.S. Navy facilities?
Well, the Navy is very particular about what can and can't be photographed.
Okay, that makes sense.
So CSHOs, they need to get permission before taking any photos, especially in sensitive areas.
So it's not just, snapping a quick picture with your phone?
No, definitely not.
There's a whole protocol.
There's a protocol for everything.
There is.
And this applies to other types of data, too, not just photos.
So it seems like every step we take in this maritime world reveals another layer of complexity.
It's a fascinating world.
It is.
But ultimately, it's all about worker safety and respecting the unique demands of the industry.
So as we kind of wrap up this part of our deep dive, it's clear that OSHA's role in maritime is anything but simple.
Absolutely.
But with the right resources and a proactive mindset, our safety and risk management pros can keep those maritime workplaces as safe as possible.
And remember, we've only scratched the surface here.
We have.
We're going to dive into even more in our final part.
Okay, I'm excited. Okay, so we've made it through the tangled world of OSHA. In agriculture and maritime.
Oh, it's been a journey.
And from, those pesticide exemptions to TWIC cards at the shipyard. It's clear that these industries, you need to go deeper.
Absolutely.
Than, just what's on that OSHA poster.
You got to know your stuff.
You do.
So the question is, how do we actually apply all this knowledge to create a safer work environment?
That's what it's all about.
Right, because knowing the rules is one thing.
But
putting them into action, that's the real challenge.
And especially, for our listeners who are dealing with multiple sites, contractors, constantly changing regs.
It can be overwhelming.
It can be.
So let's start with something that's really important in any industry, but especially crucial here.
Okay.
Strong safety culture. Can't overstate it enough. It's not just about having those policies and procedures.
Right.
It's about making safety part of the DNA of your organization.
So it's that shift from, following the rules because we have to doing it safely because it's the right thing to do.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that starts at the top.
Okay.
Leadership commitment is absolutely non-negotiable when your leadership team actually prioritizes safety. Not just saying it, but backing it up with actions and resources. That sends a powerful message.
Leading by example.
Think about it. If your CEO is walking the shipyard, wearing all the required PPE, that speaks volumes to the workers.
Absolutely.
It shows them that safety matters.
And it's not just about talking the talk.
No.
It's about walking the walk.
That's right.
And that includes, making sure there are enough resources for training.
Yes. Equipment. Personnel.
You can't expect workers to be safe if they haven't been trained properly. Or they don't have the right tools. And honestly, investing in safety, it's not just the right thing to do. It's also smart business. Think about the costs associated with accidents and downtime and potential OSHA fines.
Prevention is always cheaper than a cure.
Right. You said it.
So let's talk about hazard identification and control.
Okay.
Especially, in these industries, agriculture and maritime. Where there are just risks everywhere.
Inherent risks everywhere you look.
Yeah.
This is where those proactive safety and risk management skills are so important.
Give us some examples.
Regular inspections. Job safety analyses, using engineering controls and administrative controls to mitigate hazards.
It's about being one step ahead.
One step ahead.
And this is where, OSHA's resources can be so helpful.
Oh, yeah, they got great resources.
Those tool bag and tool shed directives we mentioned for maritime.
Those aren't just about jurisdiction.
They're packed with practical guidance.
Okay.
And OSHA's website, it's a goldmine of information.
So it's worth checking out.
Oh, definitely check it out regularly because they're constantly updating things.
Okay, so we've got leadership commitment, we've got resources, we've got hazard identification, we've got control. What else is crucial?
The big one, worker involvement. Don't just tell your workers about safety. Involve them.
Okay.
They are on the front lines.
Yeah.
They know the job better than anyone.
Right.
So tap into that expertise.
Okay, how do we do that?
Get their input on safety procedures.
Okay.
Empower them to report unsafe conditions.
Yeah.
and make sure they feel heard.
So it's about that trust and open communication.
That's it.
So that safety is a collaborative effort.
Exactly. Safety is a team sport.
And when incidents do happen, it's important to do thorough investigations.
Yes, investigations are key.
But don't just focus on blame.
Right. Go deeper.
Okay, figure out the root causes.
So ask yourselves, what systemic factors contributed, and how can we prevent this from happening again?
It's about learning from mistakes.
Yeah.
And this is where documentation is so important.
Right. Not just to satisfy OSHA,
right,
but to track your progress, identify trends, and show that you're serious about safety.
Documentation is your friend.
And remember, this isn't just about avoiding fines.
Right.
Or, bad press.
No, it's bigger than that.
It's about protecting lives.
Exactly.
In these industries, the stakes are high.
They are very high.
We're talking heavy machinery, hazardous chemicals,
yeah,
unpredictable weather conditions.
Velvet.
And that brings up something that's often overlooked.
Yeah.
And that's the human factor.
That's huge.
Fatigue, stress, complacency.
All of those things can lead to unsafe acts, no matter how good your policies and procedures are.
So creating a supportive environment is key.
Absolutely. Encourage breaks.
Provide resources for stress management.
And constantly reinforce that message of, staying vigilant.
That's right.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into OSHA
in
agriculture and maritime,
I think the overarching message for our listeners is be informed.
Okay.
Be proactive.
Be human.
Be human.
Know the rules, yes. But go beyond the rules.
Cultivate that safety culture.
Yeah.
Rooted in respect communication.
And, a genuine commitment to protecting your workers.
Exactly. At the end of the day, everyone deserves a safe and healthy workplace.
Absolutely.
Whether they're working on a farm, a shipyard, or anywhere else.
So much great information today.
I hope so.
But this deep dive, this is just the beginning.
It is just the beginning.
We encourage you to check out those OSHA resources.
Yes.
Connect with your local OSHA office.
Yeah.
And keep those conversations about safety going.
That's right. Keep talking about it.
Thank you so much for joining us on this journey.
Absolutely.
Until next time, stay safe out there.